Have you ever had a day so bad it felt like the world was going to end? A single moment of rage that cost everything. For a decorated police officer and an army captain, a nasty road rage not only cost them their jobs, but also their reputations. They became public enemies overnight. But what no one knew was that the fight was a lie, a trap to silence them. Now, to survive, they must trust the one person they hate most in the world, each other. This is the story of how two enemies came together to expose a truth that could tear everything apart. This story is just the beginning. Before we dive into how this all blew up, make sure you're already subscribed. Because every story I tell, from now on, is about a line that was crossed, and trust me, you won't want to miss any of them. It was exactly 11 days. Just 11 days separated a nasty brawl on the hot Nevada asphalt from the biggest scandal the State Highway Patrol has ever seen in its history. To understand how it all exploded, you need to go back with me to that afternoon. Picture a long, lonely stretch of Route 95, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desert, with the sun beating down so brightly that the air seemed to tremble. This is where we meet our first character. Commanding a police checkpoint was Trooper Ava Rostova. With 15 years of service on that road, she wasn't just a cop, she was a legend. Truckers called her the Wall because nothing and no one got past her if there was the slightest doubt. She was tough. There was no room for small talk or excuses. Her uniform was always impeccable, her hair tied in a tight bun, and her expression was that of someone who'd seen it all and was unimpressed by nothing. That day, everything was business as usual. Cars, trailers, trucks, more. It was the calm before the storm. And then at 2:20 in the afternoon, she saw it. Coming in the distance, a lone truck. It wasn't just any truck. It was a black Peterbilt, 389, so new and shiny, it looked like it had just rolled out of the factory. It was empty, just the tractor unit, gleaming in the desert sun. This wasn't normal for this route. Ava's experience screamed that something was wrong. With a simple wave of her hand, she ordered the truck to stop. It obeyed immediately, pulling over gently. The door opened, and whoever stepped out wasn't the rough, tired trucker she'd expected. It was a woman. Her posture was straight, her gaze firm, and she had a confidence that seemed to challenge Ava's warmth and authority. She wore no uniform, just civilian clothes, but there was something in her walk, something that betrayed a discipline not learned just anywhere. Ava approached, her face impassive. "Vehicle and driver's license, please," she said, her voice cold and sharp as the desert night wind. The woman stared at her for a moment, a tense silence lingering between them before turning to retrieve a black folder from the passenger seat. She handed over the documents without a word, and it was there, on those sheets of paper, that Ava's world began to turn upside down. Inside that folder, beneath the truck's purchase and sale agreement, was the document that would change everything. It was a military ID. The name was Captain Maya Torres, United States Armed Forces. Ava felt a chill despite the 100-degree heat. An army captain. That explained her posture, her unwavering gaze. The captain broke the silence with a firm voice. "I bought it yesterday. I'm taking it home, ma'am." Ava ignored the military title for a moment and focused on what she knew, on the procedures. She analyzed the paperwork and found the flaw she was looking for. The vehicle transfer hadn't been completed. In the system, the Peterbilt still belonged to the previous owner. She crossed her arms, a gesture all her subordinates knew and feared. "Why didn't you wait for the transfer to be finalized at the DMV, Captain?" "The previous owner had to travel at the last minute," Maya replied, unfazed. "We've got everything sorted out for Monday. He gave me the signed contract. Everything's fine." "And you slept at his house?" "Yes, with his wife." "I was off duty on a personal trip." The answer was perfect, but for Eva, it was too perfect. The suspicion that was just a spark now became a small flame. She began her ritual. She walked around the truck, tapping the tires, checking the chassis, the license plate, the paint. She even took out her flashlight and inspected the underside of the vehicle, even in the blazing sun. It was a display of power. When she returned to the captain's face, her voice was even harder. "I want you to open all the compartments of the vehicle." "The truck has no compartments, trooper. It's empty." "Even so, I request immediate opening." "It's standard procedure." Captain Maya didn't move a muscle, but her gaze turned icy. "And do you have a warrant for this search? Or are you just going to invoke your police power to justify an excess?" Eva felt her blood rise. She had heard this kind of challenge before, but never from someone with a rank, someone who should understand hierarchy. "You're insinuating that I'm abusing my power." "I'm not insinuating, I'm asserting. I've already submitted my documents. I've already identified myself, and you're treating me as if I stole this truck. This is personal, or worse, it's discrimination." The word discrimination hung in the hot desert air like poison. The silence that followed was total. The other officers watching from afar exchanged glances, one of them discreetly touching the butt of his gun. A line had been crossed. For Eva, her honor, her authority, everything had been called into question in front of her team. She stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Get against the truck. Hands on your head. Now." But Captain Maya Torres didn't move. Her feet seemed rooted to the ground. Her jaw was clenched, her shoulders tense. "No," she said, her voice low, but defiant. "You're abusing your authority." I identified myself as a military officer. I am on personal transport, and my documentation has been presented. This approach is excessive and humiliating. Eva felt her hand itch, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Her hand was already on her gun. "You are resisting an order from a federal authority." "I am resisting an arbitrary act," the captain replied. The exchange of glances between the two at that moment seemed to suck all the air out of them. It was more than a traffic dispute. It was a clash of worlds, a clash of power. Highway patrol officer versus army soldier. Two symbols of authority in a deadly standoff. Eva, sensing she was losing control, took a step forward. Maya didn't back down. And then it happened. As if the universe had held its breath, everything stopped. The noise of the other cars faded. The desert wind died down. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the two women. On impulse, Eva reached out and yanked hard on the truck's door handle, a last-ditch attempt to assert her dominance. But the captain reacted with lightning speed. She slammed the door back, nearly crushing the officer's hand, and said through gritted teeth, "You've crossed the line." What came next was swift, brutal, and shocked everyone watching. A punch, a sharp, precise punch to Trooper Eva Rostova's face. Eva staggered back, her hand to her face, shock etched in her eyes, but she didn't fall. Instead, pain and humiliation transformed her. She lunged forward like a wounded lioness. The two women grappled in the middle of the highway, falling together. Onto the scorching asphalt, it was an unbelievable scene. Drivers honked, cell phones came out of their pockets and started filming, but no one dared interfere. There, under the relentless sun, a federal police officer and an army captain exchanged. Punches, kicks, and shoves. All the training, all the discipline, all the institutional apparatus seemed to have been switched off. In that moment, there were only two women, two wounded prides, waging a private war in the middle of nowhere. And every second of that war was being recorded, sealing their fates in a way neither could have imagined. It's crazy to think about, isn't it? Two people who are supposed to protect us are forced into this situation. I want to hear your opinion. Have you ever witnessed something like this, a situation where authority went too far? Leave your comment below. Let's talk about it. The next day, Eva Ristova's name was no longer a local legend. It was a national headline. Videos of the fight spread like wildfire. The punch, the fall on the asphalt, the savage struggle. It was everywhere, in truckers' groups, on news sites, on channels across the political spectrum. And Eva's greatest fear came true. No one wanted to know the motives, the context, the provocation. Everyone just wanted the spectacle. The punishment was swift and severe, an immediate suspension. She had to surrender her badge, her weapon, and was ordered to stay home until internal affairs decided her future. Her world, built on 15 years of exemplary service, crumbled in less than 24 hours. Across Las Vegas, Captain Maya Torres faced a similar fate. She was taken to a detention facility at Nellis AFB, received 3 stitches in her forehead, and given a clear order: absolute silence. But in that military environment, silence could be more dangerous than any injury. The first piece of the puzzle appeared 3 days later. Eva was at Highway Patrol headquarters, submitting documents for the internal investigation, when she was discreetly called to a basement room. Inside, a retired inspector named Eloise Vance, a true living legend of the force, was waiting for her. The air in the room was heavy. "Close the door, Rostova," Eloise said, her voice grave, "and turn off your cell phone." Eva's blood ran cold. She knew this wasn't about their fight. It was about something much bigger. Eloise got straight to the point. Route 95, where you set up that roadblock, has been on our radar for months. 4 loads of electronics, 3 loads of medical equipment, and 1 load of high-tech parts. All disappeared without a trace. No trackers were activated. You know what that means? That someone on the inside knows how to shut everything down, Eva replied, her mind racing. Exactly. And last week, you received a suggestion to patrol that specific route, coming from an inside channel. Where did it come from? Eva hesitated. From the regional operations sector, Eloise shook her head. That alert came from a number that no longer exists in our records. A ghost sector. And the soldier you approached, Captain Torres, was returning from a city near where one of those shipments disappeared. Eva's eyes widened. "You're saying they used me to stop someone who might have seen something," Eloise corrected her. "I'm saying they used you as bait. They knew your reputation, your short fuse. They used you to provoke, to destabilize. And when you reacted exactly as they expected, you became the perfect scandal to cover it all up." The revelation fell on Eva like a ton of bricks. She, the uncompromising cop, the wall, had been just a pawn in a much larger, dirtier game. Her anger, her pride, everything had been manipulated. As she tried to process this betrayal, at the military base, Captain Maya Torres woke with a strange feeling. A metallic taste in her mouth and a knot in her stomach. Her personal cell phone, which she kept hidden, vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. There was no text, just an image. The photo was of the facade of her mother's house, a simple little house in Flagstaff, Arizona. And right below the photo, a sentence that froze her blood. "You've gone too far. We know where you stand." Fear, an emotion Maya rarely felt, hit her full force. She jumped out of bed and ran to the quarters of Lieutenant Marcus Thorne, a trusted friend since their academy days. He was calm, analytical, and already suspected that the fight on the road had not been a simple coincidence. "This is a threat," he said, looking at his cell phone screen. "And it didn't come from outside. This is internal. It's a warning." "A warning? Of what? That you saw something you shouldn't have, or were in the wrong place at the wrong time? And maybe the highway patrol pulled you over because of it?" "I didn't see anything. Maya, you saw it. You just haven't understood what you saw yet. Her head was spinning. The punch, the humiliation, the suspension, it all began to fit together in a frightening way. That same night, in different parts of the city, the two women, public enemies, were beginning to understand they were linked by something much darker than a fight. They were the center of a conspiracy. And now, even away from their duties, the danger was real. Alone in her apartment, Eva heard a soft noise. An envelope had been slid under her door. Heart racing, she picked it up. Inside, there wasn't a threat. There was something worse. A complete and confidential file on Captain Maya Torres. Details of her career, her family, information that not even Maya's superiors should have easy access to. And at the bottom of the last page, a sentence. Handwritten in cold, precise script. Either you shut up, or you'll bleed much more than you did on that asphalt. Eva sat on the couch, her breath catching in her throat. Her service weapon was holstered, but for the first time in a long time, she felt completely disarmed. This was no longer an administrative proceeding. It was a war, and the city of Las Vegas, with all its bright lights, suddenly seemed like the darkest place in the world. The city of Las Vegas dawned under a gray sky, a rarity in the desert. For Eva Rostova, every step outside her home was calculated. The image of Maya's classified file wouldn't leave her mind. Someone within the system wanted her to know two things: that they had the power to access any information and that they were watching her every move. This was personal. It was a silent, deadly message. Eva drove to the only place where she still felt in control, the Highway Patrol's regional archive. A dusty place where former colleagues owed her favors. She needed to find the source of the order that had placed her in that checkpoint. Among stacks of forms and old operations records, she searched for hours and found what she feared: nothing. There was no formal order, no circular, no document justifying the approach to Maya's Black Peterbilt. Only the verbal warning, the trap that had been perfectly set for her. Meanwhile, at the military base, Captain Maya Torres paced with the eyes of a predator. She knew she was being watched. Conversations stopped as she passed. The looks on each other's faces were different. And when she asked her friend, Lieutenant Thorne, to check the security footage in the hallway of her barracks, confirmation came. The footage from the previous night, the night she received the threat, had been erased. My data was leaked, Marcus, she told him, her voice low and tense. Someone handed it to me on a silver platter. And you think command will protect you? Of course not, he replied with a weary sigh. They both knew that in the rigid structure of the army, any deviation from protocol was punished with crushing. Silence. Maya took her cell phone out of her pocket. The photo of her mother's house was still there, a constant reminder of what was at stake. At 6 o'clock that same day, fate, or perhaps whoever was behind it all, decided to bring the two together. The encounter took place in the most unlikely place, a small convenience store near an old, abandoned train terminal. Maya went in to buy a soda. Ava was leaving with a pack of batteries. The shock was electric. For an instant, the world stopped. Eva backed away. Maya paused, but her gaze remained steady. And it was Eva who broke the silence. Someone gave me your full file. Details not even your superior should know. Maya's face went pale, and someone sent me a photo of my mother's house. In that moment, the animosity between them dissolved. They were no longer enemies, they were targets. They're playing with. Use, Eva said, or rather, they're using us. That fight wasn't just a fight, it was a setup. Someone put you in front of me on purpose. I was the target, but so were you. Eva looked around, paranoia taking over. Let's get out of here. Eva pulled Maya by the arm, and they both got into her car, a plain Honda Civic that didn't attract attention. She drove away from the city lights to an abandoned gas station on the edge of the desert, a place where no one would look for them. And there, surrounded by darkness and silence, the two finally came clean. Distrust gave way to the need to survive. They spoke simultaneously, exchanging information, piecing together the puzzle. Maya told her about the security camera footage. That had been erased. Eva revealed that the order to patrol Route 95 came from a shadow sector and that the two agents supposedly responsible for the order were never found. It was a smokescreen and they were trapped in the middle of it. Cargo is disappearing, people are disappearing, and there are people in uniform involved in this, Maya said, more to herself than to Eva. And anyone who tries to ask the right questions becomes a headline grabber, Eva added, bitterness in her voice. They knew we'd get into trouble. They counted on it. They set up the circus, planted the conflict, and now they want us to stay quiet, ashamed of what happened. Eva took a deep breath, her once steady hands now trembling. What if we don't shut up? Maya looked at her, and for the first time, a small, ironic smile appeared on her face. Then we find out who really rules this road. The decision was made. The next morning, as if their enemies could hear their thoughts, they both received identical messages on their cell phones. They were from different numbers, but the message was the same, short and to the point. The next step will be on State Highway 160. Don't be there. It was a clear warning, an order disguised as advice. But for Eva Rostova and Maya Torres, it wasn't a warning, it was an invitation. It was the map to the heart of the beast. For the first time since they'd met on that hot asphalt, they were on the same side. And for the first time, they knew who the real enemy was. The tables had turned. They were no longer the prey. They were the hunters. And the hunt was about to begin on a back road, far from the eyes of the law they had once sworn to uphold. They could trust no one but each other. The police officer and the soldier, two halves of the same coin, united against a darkness that threatened to engulf not only their careers, but their very lives. The scent of danger was in the air, and they were ready to dive headfirst into. It thought the night in Las Vegas was restless. In a small rented apartment, Captain Maya Torres watched the video of the fight for the 1,000th time. She wasn't torturing herself. She was studying it, searching for the exact moment she lost control, the moment the trap closed on her. And then her cell phone vibrated. Hidden number. She answered, her heart pounding. On the other end, silence. And then a distorted voice, like a ghost on a bad phone line, began to speak. If you're listening to this, it's because you've decided not to be silent. I'm a highway patrol agent, but not for long. For months, I've been tracking operations that never officially existed. Cargoes that disappear, some registered, some not. But they all have one thing in common. Route 95, and now, you and Trooper Rostova have become all too visible pieces on the board. The voice paused, and Maya held her breath. There is a document, a 30-page internal report called the Scarlet Brief. It contains names, times, types of cargo, license plates, dates, everything. It was turned over to Highway Patrol Intelligence 2 months ago and disappeared. It was filed as inconsistent, but I made a copy. The recording ended with an address, a street in Boulder City, a small town 20 miles away. Maya hung up, saved the audio to an encrypted flash drive, and knew what she had to do. She needed Eva. The next morning, the two were side by side again, at the same abandoned gas station. Maya told her everything. Eva listened silently, her jaw clenched. This changes everything, she said. A report like that, with names, license plates, routes, is the whole spider's web. And worst of all, someone from our own agency filed it. So we'll find out who. They rented an old car with fake plates outside the system. They drove to Boulder City, a town that time forgot. The address led them to a garage behind a disused metal shop. Maya leapt away, Ava backing her from afar. The door was locked, but beside it, under a broken tile, lay a key. Inside dust, an old computer, and, on a table, a manila envelope with a red ribbon, the Scarlet dossier. Eva opened the envelope with trembling hands. The pages bore the official State Highway Patrol letterhead, stamped confidential. And at the top, a parallel route report code Scarlet. Author Agent C78, status archived, and then came the names. Names Eva knew. Active duty officers, people in command positions. My God, she whispered, this is dynamite. On the last page, a handwritten note. If anything happens to me, notify Trooper Ava Rostova and Captain Maya Torres. They were the only ones who didn't look away. At that exact moment, Maya's phone vibrated. A new message from an unknown number. You've been notified. Now it's too late. Attached is a photo of their rental car, parked in front of the garage. We're almost at the conclusion. But before we head into the chase, a quick request. If you believe stories like this need to be told, the best way to make this truth reach more people is by liking it. It costs nothing and shows the platform that this is an important message. I appreciate your support. Now, hold on tight, because the escape begins now. Panic and adrenaline took over. They looked at each other, the same thought racing through their minds. They weren't just watching anymore, they were here. Without wasting a second, they ran to the car, the dossier clutched by Eva for dear life. Maya jerked the engine and accelerated. As they rounded the first corner, they saw it. A black SUV with tinted windows parked next to a garbage truck. The moment they passed, the SUV sped off, its tires screeching on the asphalt. The chase began, through the potholed streets of Boulder City, then through a stretch of woods, and finally back onto the highway. Maya drove with the skill of someone trained for combat, weaving between cars. Ava, at her side, worked quickly. She grabbed the flash drive with the recording and the copies of the dossier. She knew they needed a plan B after 15 minutes. Of a breathtaking chase, Maya managed to lose the SUV, turning onto a dusty rural road and disappearing in a cloud of dust. They stopped at an abandoned warehouse in the middle of nowhere, her heart still hammering. Using Maya's weak cell phone signal, Eva sprang into action. She sent digital copies of the Scarlet Brief to 4 renowned investigative journalists and an Arizona congressman known for his tough stance against corruption. We can't trust anyone on the inside anymore, Ava said hoarsely. But if this document leaks to the media, the game changes. There's only one problem, Maya replied, looking out at the empty road. Now we're more than threatened. Now we're hunted. They weren't wrong. What they didn't know was that this desperate act of sending the files to the outside world was the time bomb they needed. The leak wasn't a trickle, it was a flood. It had been exactly 11 days since the fight on the asphalt. In that short period of time, the two enemies had exchanged blows, been suspended, threatened, and thrown into the center of a seemingly endless web of corruption. And now, with the Scarlet dossier in the hands of the press and politicians, the noise became deafening. The names were there. The license plates, the routes, the payments, the diversions, everything exposed for the world to see. The country, which had previously reveled in the video of the brawl, now fell silent for a few hours. And then it exploded. The ensuing police operation was massive. 32 search warrants, 21 immediate suspensions, 10 arrests. And among those arrested were 3 regional superintendents of the Highway Patrol, 5 high-ranking inspectors, 2 internal affairs officials, and a former intelligence coordinator, the same one who had made the original report disappear. Justice, which had seemed blind, now saw with frightening clarity. The entire country followed the developments live. News helicopters circled over the Highway Patrol's administrative buildings. Social media exploded with images of patrol cars carrying officers arrested in their own homes. It was the system, turning against itself, a painful and necessary internal cleansing. But the high point, the moment that sealed this incredible story, came that night. The State Highway Patrol's general director delivered a statement on national television. With a firm voice, she looked directly into the camera and said, "The State Highway Patrol will not bow to internal gangs. This force has nearly 100 years of history and will not be tarnished by a small group that use the uniform to enrich themselves at the expense of the American people." Those responsible were identified, and those who knew and remained silent will be held accountable. And then something unexpected happened. Behind the director, on a giant screen, 2 photos appeared. On one side, Trooper Eva Rostova. On the other, Captain Maya Torres. It was they, even when suspended, even when threatened, who had the courage to denounce what many preferred to ignore. And so today, I announced the immediate reinstatement of both of them to their duties. Without punishment, without a mark on their records, and with the deepest respect of this institution. The country applauded. Some were moved, others doubted. But no one could ignore the courage of those 2 women. They began as enemies, united only by the violence of a fight on the asphalt. But in the end, they became the unlikely heroines of a much larger story. They proved that honor isn't in the uniform you wear, but in the choices you make when no one is looking. The police officer and the soldier, who nearly destroyed each other, ended up saving the soul of one of the country's most important institutions. And somewhere at an abandoned gas station in the middle of the desert, perhaps they met one last time, no longer as enemies or forced allies, but as 2 people who stared into the abyss and, instead of retreating, decided to jump in together. And in doing so, they didn't just survive. They soared. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. The truth always finds a way, and there are many more stories like Eva and Maya's waiting to be told. To not miss the next case, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.